Imagine this. The best pasta sauce you have ever tasted sits abandoned on a plate. Wasted sauce. That is a tragedy. If only you had used Barilla al Bronzo pasta. Its bronze-cut texture holds your sauce and scoops up every last drop. The Italians call that scarpetta. Capture sauce the Italian way. Barilla al Bronzo. Click or tap the banner to find out more.
Now, from Studio 77, it's Positively Ernie Extra. New York's TV legend and 77 WABC radio talk host is ready with positive news and interviews that inform, educate, and inspire you. Here's Ernie.
All righty, and here we are. Welcome to the show. Another great one for you today. You know, we all know that technology and the internet have changed the world in so many different ways and the way we live. And it's made a huge impact on social media. Millions of people are using FaceTime. I use it a lot. Everyone's making Zoom calls, and we're posting videos and a lot more. And a lot of people, and maybe you're one of them, are part of the hottest trend to look your best. You want to look your best. Well, it's no surprise that online social media has cosmetic procedures and treatments booming. Plus, people are enjoying their body shape, no matter what size they wear. For many, it's just a very positive experience. We'll buy that. And so our show today is all about your face and your body, looking good for whoever's looking at you, including yourself. Great guests on the show. My first guest is Dr. Sophie Barsich. She is a top-rated New York City plastic surgeon with an outstanding reputation for her state-of-the-art cosmetic surgery and artistry, and she's one of the best. And I'm glad that we've got her here. Hi, Sophie. Good to have you here.
Hi, it's so great to be here. Thank you.
You know, you're interesting in a very interesting way because you're involved with a very creative and challenging profession, particularly now that we're talking about all of this social media change. What got you into this in the first place, Dr. Sophie?
So, I had a little bit of an unusual path to where I am, but I'm very glad for it, or I don't think I would have ended where I did end. So I was in the French school system, in a very international system when I was growing up, and they sort of guide you to where you're going to be when you're very young. So they said to me, you're pretty good at math and biology. You should be a doctor. And I said, okay, I'll buy that. And then when I went to college, there were all these other things I could do, and I had never really been exposed to art. So I sort of veered off a little bit and got really deeply into design. And after all that was said and done, it turns out that they were right. And I was meant to be a doctor, but I was meant to be an artistic doctor. Wow. So I finally landed in plastic surgery, which sort of blended everything together. And it's been perfect for me.
That's a great story. And I know that you're very enthusiastic about what you do. And you have to have passion.
I love it.
Yeah, you really have to love what you're doing. And I think anybody listening to us will know that if they enjoy their work, it's not work. It's an old line, but there's a lot of truth to it. Hey, let's talk about what's happening with facial expressions and people looking at themselves, on camera with Zoom and FaceTime. You're getting a lot of business as a result of that. Talk about that. Give us an idea.
Yeah, it was really sort of a welcome surprise. So when COVID hit and people were staying home, and then we had to close our operating rooms, and everybody sort of sat back and said, I don't know what's going to happen with the industry. Everybody's at home. They're not going out, and, they're sort of worrying and about, very big, important things. And what are we all going to do?
Right.
And what was so interesting is that the shutdown, in terms of the surgical shutdown, didn't last very long. And in the meantime, everybody was online.
Yes.
And even though they weren't in rooms together, they were looking at themselves in a whole new way.
Exactly.
So you see the camera and your little picture of yourself,
right.
And then you see a big picture of yourself, and you go, oh, that's so interesting. And one of the things I always talk about with my patients, sometimes when I'm with a patient in the consultation room, I might actually get my camera and take a picture of something that I see on them and show them the picture, even though they're fully capable of looking at the mirror.
Right.
Because what you see in a picture looks different than what you see in a mirror.
There's no question about it. When you're looking at when you're looking at yourself on camera, there's a different view, and it depends on the angle of how you're sitting or how your camera or your phone is positioned. So you have to help them out with that. But how do you advise them when they start saying, saying, okay, I want to look better, my eyes, my mouth, my chin, my neck, and so forth, because there's so much to look at, and you don't want to do things that they don't need, right?
No, of course not.
Right.
So, I really pride myself on the fact that I don't push procedures on patients.
Good.
And, no good comes of that anyway, because no one's going to be happy doing something that's not really coming from them.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, a lot of patients do need recommendations and guidance, because sometimes they're just going, something's off and I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to help them zone in on what's actually bothering them. And I find that there's a couple different categories of things, especially when it comes to face.
Okay.
There's the stuff that you never liked in the first place, but you're maybe just starting to decide you're going to do something about it.
Right.
And then there's the stuff that never was there and just crept up on you.
Yep.
Surprise.
Surprise.
And that's a whole other story too.
Yeah.
And then there's the stuff that life does, where maybe you've just been worrying a lot the last 2 years, and all of a sudden those 11s between your eyes, now they're much deeper than they ever were, and it's just distracting.
So
and
you
want
give
people
them
to stop asking you why you're mad.
Okay, so you give them an overview, right? And then you tell them what you think should be done. Sometimes there's a procedure, or, whatever it happens to be, fillers, Botox. That's very popular right now.
Yeah, so there's been an incredible trend towards less invasive procedures for obvious reasons. People, whether it's the downtime or the expense or just being afraid of doing something more invasive. And it's really wonderful because there's such a broad spectrum of things available to people.
Yep.
And especially if you're just sort of starting to think about things, there's a very good chance that there's something that's not a very big deal that you can kind of start with and just test the waters and see if it's worth it.
Gradual.
And if you like it.
Yeah, makes sense.
Exactly.
This
so
also...
sometimes that's the good way in.
Of course. And, we both know that when you feel that you look good, it has a tremendous impact on your attitude. And your sense of confidence, how you feel about yourself. And, if you're looking good, for example, because we're using all of this technology, it could be really important to the success of your career. It could be personal relationships as well. There's a lot to think about here, right, Dr. Sophie?
It is absolutely true. Every once in a while I have a patient who comes in and consults for something and says something like, I'm really not that vain. And, I really, this is not the kind of thing I normally would do. And I try to very quickly get rid of all of that negative thinking or the guilt or is this a vain thing. The impact that this can have on a person's life is so much bigger than a lot of people realize.
Oh, sure.
And it can improve a relationship with your partner. It can make you so much more confident for a job interview, which might land you the job.
Right.
There's just so many ways. Even as a parent, parents who feel really comfortable with themselves, they kind of demonstrate that to their children, and their children will mirror that as well.
Absolutely, it makes a huge difference.
There's a whole environment that surrounds that, and it's a very, very impactful sort of process.
If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey, you know what? We have a caller, and we're going to take a call right now. Hello, you're on the air. It's Ernie at Estes. How are you?
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
This is Nan. You hear me?
Hi, Nan. We can hear you. How are you doing? Thanks for listening to our show. You have a question? We have Dr. Sophie on the line. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I have two quick things I'd like to say and a practical question.
Okay, go ahead.
So, first I'd like to say thank you, Ernie. I've been saying for years that the greatest single most important thing for the health of our country would be to have a media as you envision it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We try our best, Nan. I appreciate those comments.
I've been saying this for years. That brings us positive news, lifts us up, brings us together.
Thank you.
You are with my book, really, because you have been all these years trying to more good than bad and highlighting that. So I want to
thank you for that. How can we help you out today? We're talking about cosmetic surgery, looking better for, social media and everything else.
So I have a comment and a question.
Sure.
Okay, first of all, I'm 78 years old, and at this point in my life, I have to say I can understand why some people want to do it, but I have the privilege and joy of feeling that I look like what I look like. If you like it, great. If
Good.
you don't,
I like that.
too bad. I'm comfortable with that. If someone doesn't love me because of my looks, well, who needed that person in my life anyway? So that's the way I feel.
Okay, I like your style.
So, but that being said, we might as well look as good as we can naturally.
Yeah. Sure.
And that leads me to my question. Without going through any of those procedures and stuff, what tips can you give us about lighting and things that we can do to look better in Zoom? I know there's certain tricks and techniques for like Zoom and FaceTime that make you look better.
Okay, Dr. Sophie, talk about that.
Yeah.
What can we do in terms of, lighting and makeup and all that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So lighting is actually very important. And, most people don't really think about this much or don't know much about it, but there's a color to every light that's different. And some color, the same way that if you're in, a restaurant, you go in the bathroom and there's a fluorescent light, everything looks different. And all of a sudden you see certain marks you never saw and you see the gray hairs a little bit more. So if there's going to be an environment from which you're taking a lot of calls, you actually want to consider the lumens in the light bulb itself and figure out which color it is and which is the color that's going to make you look best. So that's one very important thing. Also, which way the light's facing. You don't want it to be kind of glaring from one side or too much from the front. So you want it kind of soft. And then, it's a miracle that the filters are miracles. If the technology is there, let it work to your advantage. And there's nothing wrong with that. So, but the lighting is a very big part of it.
And what about makeup as well?
Makeup, that's the other thing. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think when people go on Zoom calls, now they've probably kind of figured it out, but I don't think the automatic reflexes put the full makeup and make sure the powder's on and all that. But, it's actually more important than when you're live because the shine is going to show a little bit more. So my biggest tip is, make sure you have a little bit of color in your cheeks and make sure you have a little powder everywhere else. And that's sort of, it's a good habit to get into because you don't want the shine to be distracting either.
Right. And you can preview, to see what you look like. Nan, is this helping you out? Is this helping you out?
Yes, it is. But how do you access the filters that you talked about?
It depends on what platform you're on, really. But usually, whether it's Zoom or anything else, they should have functionality where you can sort of put different kinds of filters, or even just say don't put me in HD.
There is a menu there, Nan, that you can go and check, and it'll tell you what you can do in terms of filters. There are a lot of adjustments that can be made, and all you have to do is just experiment a little bit before you're actually talking to someone. Just try it out and see how you look.
Oh, great. Thanks very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the phone call.
Bye,
Keep up the good work.
Okay. We appreciate that, okay? Dr. Sophie, she was mentioning that she was 78 years old, which is young, and she feels good about herself. I wanted to ask you, the emphasis on youth has kind of changed a little bit. We both know the advertising world, the commercial world, is just showing more diversity, which is a good thing, and saying, this is how we really look. And I think that's a positive idea that they're promoting so that people feel more comfortable about themselves, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, I think there's been also, this has been reflected in plastic surgery trends as well, which is a wonderful thing. So, 50 years ago, 50 years old or 60 years old or 70 years old, that meant one thing. It's very, very different now. People are very active. They're very health conscious. They are, out playing sports well into their 60s, 70s, sometimes 80s. And, it's not the age anymore. And even in terms of beauty ideals, I don't have a lot of patients who come in who are over the age of 60 and say, what can we do to make me look as close to 30 as possible?
Right.
That's not the goal. The goal is to look like a vibrant, fantastic, confident 65-year-old, 70-year-old, not to look like some version of an attempt at a 30-year-old. And I think that's been a very healthy transition. It's a lot more achievable, and I think it ends up looking a lot better and being very reinforcing for patients. So that's definitely shifted a lot.
I like that very much so. And, feeling more natural about yourself, which is great, but also there's less stigma attached to people who do
Absolutely.
want to make an appearance improvement, whether
Yes.
they use Botox or something else, that if you want to do that, it's okay. And in other words, we're judging less, which I think is a good thing as well.
I absolutely agree. And I think that's very important because we do a lot of things that aren't cosmetic surgery that people celebrate. And I don't think that there should be a line that says, all the makeup and the clothing and the hair is okay, but you
Yeah.
shouldn't go and get a little injection. I think it's all sort of in the same category. And there are extremes, obviously, but barring the extremes, I think this is all part of things that we do to take care of ourselves. And I think that taking care of yourself is the ultimate experience of self-love.
Yep.
And in whatever way that is. And I think it should be encouraged. The stigma is definitely being shed, which is wonderful.
Yeah, it is.
And I think even in small versions, people are telling their close friends, and when the result is fantastic, the friend goes, "Wow, that's amazing, and you seem so happy. Maybe I should think about something." And it's not for everybody, but it's
Right.
nice that people are sort of sharing the positivity of it and letting other people feel comfortable exploring it.
Exactly. And, we kind of touched on this too, and that is, the question of appearance versus personality and saying,
Right.
okay, I mean, you want to look your best, but it's also very important to have that comfort level so that your personality is genuine and it's who you are. And I think when you meet when I meet somebody, and I've worked in television all my life, and
Right.
with a lot of beautiful people, either on the air or interviewed and so forth. And when you see someone, who just has a wonderful personality, and you can see it in their face, you can hear it in their voice, in their body language. They just light up. They light up, and they light up the screen as well. And I've always noticed that, and I've said, it's okay to look really fantastic, but it's not everything. It's the personality, to me, that really is the selling point.
Absolutely. And part of that, contagious personality or infectious personality is how the person feels about themselves. So, and, you might sometimes meet a person who looks not even that different at different phases in their life, but depending what they're going through personally, it comes across very different.
Yeah.
So I think, when someone's very comfortable, confident, feeling good, even if it's something that other people can't even see. Some people have procedures done that people out on the outside wouldn't even be able to tell, but they know for themselves, and they just carry themselves differently.
Absolutely.
And they feel a little bit different when they walk in the room, and they communicate a little bit more positively, and that radiates. As they say, the majority of communication is nonverbal.
I love everything that you've been saying, and I wish we could continue with more. I want to have you come back, Dr. Sophie. You're terrific. No, you're terrific. And, this kind of information, I think people who are listening to us, I hope are gaining something from this and learning, because you've just been a real, masterpiece of what you've been doing. I appreciate it so much. Dr. Sophie Barsich. Renowned reputation. Thank you so much. I enjoy it. And thank you, everybody, for listening to us. Positively Ernie right here on 77 WABC, a great podcast. Thank you so much for what you do for us, and I hope what we do for you. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.